And so with this afternoon, you know, it's really neat to be able to meet someone who's written one book, let alone 2 books, but like Jürgen and some others, now they're going on to multiple books. Really proud to have Diana here, who's written Agile Retrospectives. This should be the de facto book if you're coaching a team, whether you're a manager or an executive or even a scrum master. If you're going to be doing any kind of retrospective, definitely pick up this book. It is a great guide. I go through mine constantly. And when I first bought it, I thought, well, gosh, yeah, I already know all about retrospectives. And then I read the book, and Diana co-wrote this with Esther Derby. So a great book. And the other book that she wrote was Liftoff. Now, it's funny because you go through these books and you just don't know other people read them. I think today I was having a conversation about Liftoff, and another coach said, oh yeah, you use Liftoff all the time. That's the model we use to launch teams. And I think that might have, yeah, there you go. I think that came from Chris Espy. Is Chris still here? There you go. Yeah, so thank you, Chris, for the shout out. And so Diana's co-author, Ainsley, is here as well. So you can definitely tap into her and really get some great information. But these are 2 really great books. I highly recommend. They should be in your library. You should be using them before you actually do a team chartering session or before you do a retrospective. So that's a little plug. Diana didn't ask for it, but these are just so valuable. And so I'm going to jump right into this. You know, Diana has been phenomenal in the community. And recently, I was with a client, and I showed them something called the Agile Fluency model. I talked them through it. And as I was talking them through it, it was like light bulbs were coming on. And they're like, wow, this is amazing. This is a very different way to look at an Agile transformation than what I've heard. It's not this huge big bang, then everything out there is now pushed on us. And now this is, we're gonna shove this down your throat, and this is what you're gonna get. This is something where, hey, we're going to coach to where the teams are at. And it's really mindful of what was put together. And with Diana putting this together with James Shore, they've done a phenomenal job in doing that. And so Diana's going to cover a couple of those topics. But she's got some really interesting stories to share with us about how to build some high-performing teams to fit every business need. So with that, Diana Larsen.
All right. Hand over the baton.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's been a long day. Hi, everybody. Could we have the last bit of Staying Alive still go? And crank up the volume a little bit? There's only another minute or so of it, right?
That is correct.
Yeah. We're getting some energy here at the end of the day. I'm going to accuse all of you as table dancing in a moment. So, yeah, there we go. It'll do you more good. Little energy at the end of the day, you know? All right, high-performing teams. So if you don't remember anything else, think if you're going to be on a high-performing team, you got to participate. Yeah. All right. So we're going to talk about this. We'll be talking about a number of different aspects. The thing that I have come to learn over the course of, well, I started in the Agile world in 1997. So it's been over 20 years for me. And during that period of time, the thing I have learned the most is the importance of learning. And And so what you're going to notice as we go through this talk this afternoon is that theme is going to come up over and over and over again. Because it has become my belief that particularly in the software world, but really for any kind of knowledge work, it's all about learning. What we knew yesterday is no longer adequate for us. And the big challenge is, most of us have been through school, we've had education, we know to some extent or another how to manage our own learning. But when we're talking about high-performing teams, we're talking about learning together as a group. And so I want you to keep that in mind and keep thinking about, as we go through the different topics that I'm going to cover about high-performing teams, how does this relate to learning as a group? And how do we get better at doing that? Because that, in the essence, is the path to high performance, is that ability to learn together. But we're going to talk about a number of different things. First, I'm going to say a little bit about, not too much, but a little bit about when I say team high performance, what am I talking about? It may or may not match your definition, but will probably be close enough. And if my definition is wildly different from your definition, indulge me for a little while and just sit with it and think about it. So we're going to talk about what is high performance in a team, and then what contributes to that. What do we need to have to set up the conditions for that to happen? And then finally, how do our business expectations play into how high-performing our teams can be? Because the high-performing teams don't just pop out of the cubicle all well-formed, right? We cultivate them, we grow them, we give them what they need to thrive. And so we're going to be talking about that. And clear expectations for outcomes is certainly one of those things. So we're going to get to that. So get right into the definition. Qualities of high-performing teams. So since we're talking about teams, keep in mind we're not focusing on the individual team members as much as we are the whole. And to create a whole that is high-performing, team members have to share some qualities, some attributes. They need a deep sense of purpose and mission. And you're going to hear this come up over and over and over again. They need to have some ambitious performance goals, right? They need to feel like they're stretching. High-performing teams don't rest on their laurels, don't hang out in their comfort zones. They're always looking for what's the next horizon, where can we go next? They have created a common approach to their work. They've decided on that. For us in this room, many times that's going to be some flavor, some collection of Agile practices, some approach, some methodology that seems like it's kind of Agile-ish, that has some relationship to the Agile Manifesto. But in other industries, in other domains, that approach may look different. I mean, one of the ones that we know about is in the product development world, particularly like industrial products and things like that. Design thinking is an approach to the work, right? It's very aligned with Agile, and sometimes we borrow ideas from that. But a high-performing team has an approach that they take to the work, that they share. They hold themselves mutually accountable. So it's not that anyone in the organization can come to any one person on a team and say, is it done yet? No, it's not, did I get it done? It's, did we get it done? And my work is not done until all of our work is done. We are mutually accountable for the work. And we jointly hold that sense of accountability. We feel accountable to each other as well as to the folks that we are delivering to when we're on a high-performing team. And then the last quality I'm going to talk about in this part right here is complementary skills. Their work is interdependent. Knowledge work is work that, for the most part, one person can't have all the skills and all the knowledge and all the awareness of resources and all of those things to get the job done. So we need to band together to do that, and we need to make sure that the skills that we are all collectively bringing complement each other such that we can build the thing that we've been asked to build. Now, this list may seem very familiar to some of you. It was first listed in Katzenbach and Smith's book, The Wisdom of Teams. That was published in 1999. How many of you have heard of that book? Seen that book, have it on your shelf, right? It is a classic, and they just reprinted it just a couple of years ago because it is such a classic, and the wisdom about teams in that book has stood the test of time. They really understood what makes a team click together. What is it that we're trying to foster here? And interestingly, though, I think they left something out. And that was brought to my attention by my colleague, Arlo Belshi. Some of you may be, how many heard about Arlo? Know Arlo? Yeah. He said, you know, there's one more thing that teams need, one more quality, and that is the sense of shared history. Just because you put people in a room and close the door on them, they aren't automatically a team, right? And certainly, the whole department isn't a team, right? A team is a group of people who come together to accomplish a purpose, whether that's sports or building software, right? But teams create more teaminess for themselves by having experiences together. Clifford Geertz, who's a well-known anthropologist from back when, said that his definition of culture was the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, which I think is lovely. And teams need that. To really feel like a team has to have that opportunity to build some of those shared stories about their history together. Remember the time when we had to stay late and do X, Y, or Z. Remember that time when we had the marathon board game tournament that went on for 3 weeks over lunches. I mean, whether it's work-related or not, having those shared stories makes a big difference. Remember the time when our one team member blew up because she said we weren't really following our working agreements. And then she was embarrassed, and the rest of us said, no, you're right. We needed that wake-up call from you, right? Those kinds of stories make a team strong, right? So that shared history is important. Whether it's a history of missing the boat occasionally, or whether it's stories of wild successes, or some combination of both. So those are some of the qualities that high-performance teams exhibit among their team members. You'll see those things going on. I have a particular definition that I created about high-performing teams, and that is high-performing teams, we call them high-performing because they lead to high-quality deliverables. When they've done their work together, good stuff comes out the other end, right? And that has some particular ideas. So it's what the customer wants. We have delivered something the customer wants, the customer's taken it from us and said, wow, this is great, and paid us something for it. Whether it's an internal transfer or an external customer, right? We've gotten something in return, and that thing we've gotten in return has created some value for us as an organization, given us some business value. It happened in a time frame that suited our customers' needs, right? They got it when they needed it. It's easily maintainable and supportable once it's in their hands. So we may have had DevOps involved or other folks. And they've done this work together and given us this deliverable in such a way that they feel ready to take on the next challenge. They are eager to come back for the next challenge. So if they do all that first part, but they're on a death march, I always think that's interesting, the death march projects that people talk about. How many has ever heard anybody talk about a death march project? Has that ever, yeah. What's the problem with a death march?
Do it once.
Yeah, you only can do it once because everybody's dead, right? Or at least too many of us are dead to keep going, right? I mean, we use a lot of these interesting metaphors, but the idea is that is no way to run a production company, right? We need people who are ready to take on the next challenge. And so that's a part of being a high-performing team. We've worked together in such a way that we've had sustainable pace. We've hit our deadlines in the best way in collaboration with our customers, making sure we know what their timeliness needs are and what kinds of things they're going to want and that they're going to take and use. And we still have energy left at the end to begin to think about the next thing on our plate, right? So those are two really important, the qualities of a high-performing team and then what their deliverables look like are really important when we think about the definitions of high-performing teams. And that always causes me to wonder, how do we cultivate the teams that are going to produce those kinds of benefits that our businesses need? How do we make that happen? It's like growing a garden. You know, you can't just throw out the seeds, you know, just hand over a backlog and say, here. It takes some nurturing, right? It takes some weeding. It takes some tilling the soil and so on. So any guesses? How do we cultivate high-performing teams? By empowering them? What else? Bringing them clarity so that they know clearly what they're working on and why. Yeah. Giving them time to learn. Yes.
Giving them a
Sense of purpose.
Give them everything they need to succeed.
Everything they need to succeed. Yeah.
Listen to Arlo's advice and keep them together.
Yes. Listen to Arlo's advice and keep them together. Yeah.
Clarity about the what without telling them the how.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we've brought together people with those complementary skills. They know the how. They know the how better than any of the rest of us know the how, right? But they don't know the what unless we share that with them, right? Okay. So, how many of you are familiar with the Project Aristotle outcomes? Number of folks here, but not everybody. So Google decided that, you know, Google has had this reputation, and are there any Googlers in the room? If there are, please tell me if I get this wrong. I mean, you know, story, and then a story gets shared with a story, and so, you know, who knows what my version is. But from what I understand, and from reading a couple of the articles about this, Google decided that they really wanted to have more insight into why their successful teams were successful and why some of their other teams were not. And they had some hypothesis about this because, of course, they've had a reputation for only hiring the best and the brightest. And as a matter of fact, there was this interesting thing happened to me and Esther early on, soon after we had written the Agile Retrospectives book. We went to Google to do a talk. And that's back in the days when they were doing tech talks and putting them up on YouTube. And we said, okay, we were working with our handlers, you know, our contact people, and we said, okay, well, we'll do this talk, and we've got this activity, and then we'll do some more talk. Then we'll leave some time for questions at the end, and then that'll fill about the amount of time that we have. And the person said, no, don't bother leaving any time for questions. And we said, well, but people might be, yeah, they said, yes, but nobody will stand up and ask any questions. Everybody here is hired for being the best and the brightest, so they will not admit that there's something they don't know. So we got shills, and we put them in the audience. And then when a few people started asking questions, other people did too. But it was interesting about that, right? So Google had this idea that by hiring the smartest people in the world, they could have the best possible teams. So that was their hypothesis. They went out and they did research. They looked at their teams. They looked at which ones were really delivering and so on. And in the end, they found some surprising things. That the top 5 indicators of whether or not a team would be successful, would be high performing, were very different than what they had expected. Psychological safety. So now we hear about psychological safety. Now, Google, thank God for Google, because they have now given us permission to talk about psychological safety in teams. Some of us have been discussing this for some time, but now it's common knowledge, and that we need psychological safety on teams. And it's not about always being in your comfort zone, psychological safety. Psychological safety is being safe enough to take risks, to be uncomfortable with your teammates, and not feel like you're going to be embarrassed or damaged in any way as a result of that. The second thing was dependability. Can we count on each other? When we bring people together with these complementary skills and we take our common approach to work, can we then count on each other to actually do our jobs and show up and, you know, be trustworthy around that, right? And then the number of folks said we need purpose, we need clarity. That was the third thing that they saw. Is the team sort of structured and given their expectations in a clear enough way that they know what they're working on and they know what they're being expected to execute on? And then another one that is near and dear to my heart, the work needs to be meaningful. People have to feel they're doing worthy work. And for me, that is really connected back to that sense of who is our customer. How are we helping our customer, right? I was working with a group of folks one time that did some medical devices, oscilloscopes. And this would happen to be a manufacturing part of the organization, the people who made the probes for the oscilloscopes. And they were getting kind of ho-hum about their work. And we decided one day to go on a field trip to the hospital, where there were a bank of these devices and so on. And they got to hear from some patients whose blood chemistry and other things had been tested through with these probes and these oscilloscopes. And from a couple of folks that they heard from, that the accuracy of the reading that was done for their diagnosis had actually saved their life. Those folks went back to the shop floor to work on their probes with a whole other sense of why they were at work. Up until then, they just thought they were making these sort of pen-shaped, you know, whatever. Now they knew the importance of it. Their work had become meaningful, right, for them. And they saw how their work mattered which is the 5th highest key to having high-performing teams at Google. So grab a piece of paper and make a star chart like this. 0 in the middle, five lines out. Think about a current team, one that you're working with now or one that you've worked with in the past. And 0 being very low, very non-existent amounts, degrees of this quality, this key. 5 being fully expressed, absolutely on, fully present in our team. Pick an array and call that one PS for psychological safety. Label that one PS. And say, is your team a 0, a 3, a 5? To what degree is psychological safety present in the team that you've been working with? To what degree do they have dependability? Can they trust each other to do the work that they say they're going to do? What about structure and clarity? Label one of the rays SC on a scale of 0 to 5. Meaning of work. How meaningful is the work that the team is doing? Do they understand? Sometimes work is meaningful because it's just giving us a chance to learn something new, and that's okay too. It doesn't have to be out there changing the world, but it has to have meaning for us, right? And then finally, do they have a sense of the impact of their work on a scale of 0 to 5? And then connect your dots. What kind of a little star do you create on your 5-point radar chart here? Is it a shape that you feel satisfied with? Have your teams received enough cultivating to score well on these 5 keys for high performance? Who got all 5s? Who got all 0s? Right? Who has 5 rays that all are greater than 3? Yeah, okay. Right. Notice whether your rays are kind of balanced or if they're very imbalanced. You've got a lot of one of these keys, but not very much of another one. Give you some idea about where to do some work. So high-performing teams have to do with group cohesion, that dependability, that psychological safety, that we're doing meaningful work together, that creates a sense of group cohesion. And that is critically important for teams to be really high-performing. They need to feel that their exchanges, the way they interact with each other, and their differences, those complementary skills and background and knowledge sets and awarenesses, those differences, how those make patterns in their team, and how they fit into the larger organization helps a team become more cohesive. And this is important because members of highly cohesive teams or highly cohesive groups are more likely to stay together, to stick together, to do work well together. We care about it because every team is a system, and we're nested systems, right? Team is a system within an engineering department system, within the bigger IT department system, wherever that might be. And system coherence matters. We don't all have to be doing things in exactly the same way, but we have to be doing things in a way that can work together, that can fit together. Whether it's a technical system where we're talking about the system of the code, or we're talking about the human system, right? Because coherence creates congruity, consistency, logical interconnections, and higher performance. So this is another thing that we want to look for as we're trying to cultivate our high-performing teams. So one of the things I've learned about myself over time is, much to my surprise, I am a model builder. I didn't really realize that for quite a long time. This is one of the very first models I ever built back in the 1980s and 90s when I was doing work process redesign, primarily changing organizations at their behest and at the behest of their employees from individual contributor organizations to team-based organizations. And so one of the things we wanted to examine was the nature of those interactions, those exchanges. How did that foster high performance? And what we learned was that it's really important right from the beginning. It's foundational, it's fundamental, it's the bedrock, is this idea of being able to trust and be trustworthy. So those top two keys, psychological safety and dependability, right? Those are things that foster trust. So we want to be focusing on those right from the start, but we can't wait till those are coming like fully present, fully flowered. We just need enough so that we can get going. And then our conversations can shift to talk about our commitment to the work. How meaningful is this work? And our commitment to each other. Do we want to create an environment where we can do good work together, where our mutual well-being is also important, right? So we need two kinds of commitment. Commitment to the work and commitment to our team and our teammates. When we have that kind of commitment and we can express it, trust grows. It also enables us to weather our way through conflicts. If I know you care as much about the work as I do, and I know you care as much about how we work together as I do, if we have a disagreement, it's a whole lot easier to work through it, right? Because we're coming from a basic place where we know we're trying to accomplish the same thing together, and if my idea is a little bit different than your idea, well, we'll figure it out, right? So, and then as we work through conflicts together, our commitment grows and our trust in each other grows. And our ability to be creative, that really innovative clash of ideas about what direction could we go, what can we try next, that all becomes important and available to us. Because until we can deal with the differences in ideas and thinking, we can't really get to strong creativity together. And as we do creative things together, what do you think happens to those other parts? If we really have a creative experience together, what happens to our trust? It grows. What happens to our commitment to each other? Yeah. What happens to our future ability to handle conflict, right? And all of those together, when we prove to each other that we really can innovate, we can be creative, we have what it takes, then we feel like we have high performance. So the team has to have its own sense of its high performance, and it can get there through the kinds of exchanges and interactions that go on in the team. And those of us that are in coaching roles or Scrum Master roles or leadership roles can help to foster those kinds of exchanges. Another way to do that is to help teams have a very good start. And as Stacy told you, Ainsley and I wrote a little book about this because we felt like this was really important, right? So you want to start off your teams with the conditions and the tone that says we can do this. We can do this together, right? we can become high performing. And the way we do that is we have a purpose that inspires us. We pay attention to our collaboration. We attend how we are aligning with each other around the work, our common approach to the work, and our dynamic context that is constantly changing and that we have to be resilient enough to respond to as our world changes around us, as it will do. As it will do, right? So the purpose really is about meaningful work, impact, understanding what our customers' needs are. This is what inspires us. This is what tells us that our work is significant. Dan Pink says this is what motivates us, well, at least a third of what motivates us. And it lets us know that, with clarity, when we have been successful, right? Alignment helps us to create that sense of teamness, that sense of unity, greater trust, helps us figure out how our collaboration is going to work and what our commitment is going to be to each other. And finally, context. Paying attention to the context in which we are working. Who are our stakeholders? How do we fit into the overall system of what's going on in our organization? What's our contribution to that? And what risks do we need to be paying attention to as a team? This is no longer the purview just of some distant project manager. As a team, we need to understand what's going to happen when winter rolls around and we're going to start having we don't know who's going to get the flu, but we can pretty much predict somebody will. And that will have some impact on our work, right? And if we're in a very fluctuating kind of market, or if we're an early stage startup where we're still trying to figure out some of that stuff that Jürgen and David were talking about earlier, right? We're still trying to figure it out. That's going to be constantly changing. So we can't know what we're going to learn, but we do know we will be learning things and need to adjust in response to that. So those are all risks. Some of them are exciting. They're not all threatening. Some of them are going to give us great opportunities, but we can't know what that is yet. So we have to be prepared for that dynamic context that we're doing our work within. So taking some time at the beginning when a team first comes together, or if the team has been together and is kind of flailing around because they've got no clarity, doing kind of a reset time, bringing them together and say, let's create a charter. Let's figure out how we want to work together. Let's look at our purpose and our alignment and our context. I just today got a note from somebody on LinkedIn who had written a whole little article about how they used this liftoff model, this chartering model, as part of their hiring process for Scrum Masters and coaches. I sent you a copy. And they used that. They said, okay, here's some information. Here's an opportunity to ask us more questions about this information. And now what we'd like you to do is help us create some working agreements. And we'd like you to help us understand how we will deal with these risks. And they actually asked their candidates to facilitate the interview team going through this. And they're very happy with their hires. So it's a really interesting thing. But so these models can be used in a lot of different ways. One of the great things about being a model maker, I'll share you the secret with you. Because a lot of people think, oh, people build models and they put them out in the world and then they're just out there and then they go off and they do. No, what happens is your models start teaching you back. And it's so cool. Never occurred to me that somebody could use this model as part of a hiring process, and yet there it is. a wonderful story about how somebody has done that. So I encourage you, if you have any inclination in the model building direction, it's very much worthwhile. You will learn as much as anybody who reads about your model. Speaking of models, so you've got a team. You're helping them get started, but in what direction and for what purpose? James Shore and I created this Agile Fluency model because we started noticing that people were having a lot of sort of you're Agile or you're not kind of conversations. And that didn't actually match our experience. We saw Agile being successful in a lot of different ways. And that there were some folks who were actually doing pretty well with their Agile adoption, but because they didn't meet some Agile or you're not standard, thought they were failing, right? And so we said, well, what do we really think are the differences? And we actually embarked on about a 4-year research project where we kept going out, looking at different experiences, looking at different teams that we had worked with and were working with at the time, asking other folks. We'd build one edition of the model, and then we'd bring it to our local Agile Open. We have Agile Open Northwest up in Portland and Seattle, and we'd bring it there, and we'd have a session, and we'd say, okay, tell us what's wrong with this, and people would. And so, as people do, they were more than happy to share what was wrong with it. So then we'd gather up that information, take it away, rework it, incorporate those things, send out a sort of a version of it to a number of folks that we respected, both internal folks and thought leader folks. And they would tell us, you know, this part's good, but I'm not this is still unclear. And so we did that for like 4 years. And finally we got it to a place where most people, everybody that we were sending it to said, you know what, that matches my experience too. That's what I'm seeing in teams. So we came up with this model. And the idea is that this is a model of team behaviors, high-performing team behaviors that look different but depending on the kind of business need that they are serving. So this is where the high-performing teams for every business need comes in, right? So we're going to go more deeply into this. Our vision at the Agile Fluency Project is that Agile can be done well in every organization. That's what we want to see in the world. If you say you're doing Agile, we want to see it done well. And by done well, we mean your teams are practicing with the skills and the proficiencies that they need, the mastery that they need to serve your customers or to serve your internal infrastructure needs. Whatever it is you need, your teams can supply that. That's what we mean by Agile done well. If you'll notice on your tables there are some cards, and I didn't have enough cards for everyone. Yes, we're holding one up over there. But the next few things I'm going to go through, we're going to be looking at that model. So if you find a person or two to share with, I think every table has at least 3 of the cards, right? So we have this business benefits sheet that we created early on to sort of summarize some of the things that were in the white paper that we wrote about our model. And so we're going to look at that a little more closely. So we have 4 zones in the fluency model. We call them zones because we want to stay away from the word levels. These are not levels, they are zones. They are much like a bus zone. If you are in downtown San Francisco and you want to go to Golden Gate Park, are you going to get on the bus that takes you to the zone in San Bruno or, somewhere far south? No. You're going to go get on the bus and you're going to go to the zone that has what you want. You're going to go to the Science Center or whatever it is in Golden Gate Park that is the thing you want to see, right? So in much the same way, we're saying these zones represent areas of need. Now, if you're in downtown San Francisco and you want to go to the airport, well, then you got to go out a few zones, right? You get on your bus, right? So what we want to know is exactly what is your need? Where do you need to go? And then we'll tell you how many zones you need to go through. But some folks are only going to want to go to City Hall, and they only need to be in Zone 1, right? And they don't need to go any further than that, right? So that's what this is about. So focusing zone, the idea of meeting the business needs is helping businesses with these values, these areas of value. Is the team helping us reduce risk? Is the team helping us increase our productivity? Is the team helping us increase our return on our investment? Is the team helping us increase satisfaction so that we don't have churn and turnover? Right? I mean, these are very typical things that businesses are looking for, right? So each of these zones answers these needs in different ways. And so it depends on what it is your business wants. So in the focusing zone, we have teams that can work well together as a team, can be a high-performing team. They know how to collaborate. They've made the shift from thinking in terms of components to thinking in terms of business value. So they're building according to business value, not according to engineering Kulf, right? They are building in small increments so that if we learn something in our marketplace and we need to change our direction, these teams can shift direction in the way we need them to, right? We always know they're working on the next most valuable thing. Team management knows when the team is building the wrong thing because they're transparent, right? At least once a month or more often, the team can show you what they're working on and how they're progressing. So the business never has to wonder what's going on in this team. It's not a black box. It's working in partnership with the larger organization. The next zone on our model you need all that stuff from focusing, and you get all that stuff, but then you also get some other things. Now you get teams who can release at will, who are doing continuous integration, who show up, who are doing unit testing, TDD, refactoring, those engineering skills in such a way that they are exposing impediments to getting the work done early on. The really highest expression of delivering teams are those teams that are producing no bugs and they're not releasing into production, right? And they are releasing frequently according to the customer's time frame. Remember that high-performing deliverable according to the customer's time frame. They are, what's a couple of other things they're doing here? The low defect rates, I mentioned that. Shipping on the market cadence. Low technical debt is making the job more fun. It's greater satisfaction for our team members. We also have optimizing zone. This is a tough one. We find most teams that we talk to, their businesses are willing to invest in either focusing or delivering zone. And it's because there aren't that many companies that are doing the kinds of things or building the kind of products where they really need to be in optimizing zone. The innovative, disruptive, market disruption products. What Jürgen was talking about this morning in terms of the sustaining versus what was the other There was a growing and a sustaining, exploring and sustaining, right? So optimizing is for folks who are in a steep exploring zone. Focusing and delivering are those folks that are in sustaining mode, right? So optimizing, the team not only knows the technical aspects of what they're building and how to do that, but they understand how it fits in the marketplace. They've got a truly cross-functional team that is always together, that includes product people and UX people and DevOps people and business folks and everybody that's needed to get their product out the door. And we find that's maybe 5 to 10% of teams. And even smaller number are in our fourth zone, which we call strengthening. And this one is one where teams are actually focusing a lot on the health of the whole business, not just their own product. Very few organizations in this zone, but very few organizations have teams that need to be in this zone. But there are a few. There are a few out there. And if you'll notice on the stickers or the model card on your thing, you'll notice there's a little tail that comes out from strengthening zone. That's because we've begun to get some weak signals that there is another zone out there, at least one more. And we're not absolutely sure what it is, but it is where organizations are supporting team behaviors that actually are looking at the health of the community or the health of the industry beyond just the health of their own organization. And we're beginning to see some of those out there. They're mostly small-ish, maybe late-stage startups that have really held on to some interesting ideas about culture and how they fit in the world. I haven't seen enough of them to really describe them well. But we have seen enough of these to be able to describe them. So there is your model, your card. You can see there's some additional things on here about in order to get those benefits, what do you need to invest in, right? And how long might that kind of Agile adoption take? There's some interesting information on this card, and there's more on our website. So how many in here think that you probably need teams in the focusing zone? You've got a team in mind, and you think that one needs to be a focusing zone team. Okay, a lot of hands. Delivering zone teams? More, okay. Optimizing zone teams? All right, a few, yeah. Strengthening? Yeah. Some of the strengthening zone teams that I've seen, in their organizations, they're expected to help startups in internal incubators. Or they're expected to share services like database folks or whatever, but be willing to sacrifice their product for other products that might be more important to the company right now. Those kinds of things. So the question I want to leave you with is, how will you cultivate the high-performing teams you need to meet your business needs? And how will you invest in team coherence, in the beginnings of teams, set the right tone, in their fluency, their skill level capabilities? All of these things are so important if you want your teams to be high performing. And of course, it's all up to you. The reason that James and I formed the Agile Fluency Project is we became aware that individually we don't scale. I can touch at most 2 or 3 clients a year and tell them what I know about all this. But you can touch a lot more organizations than I can alone, right? So whether or not these investments get made is really up to all of us, not just to me and Jim, because we came up with a model, right? Plus, we'll never get taught back anything if you're not out there doing this work. So for a deeper dive in the Agile Fluency model, we do have a free downloadable ebook. You just have to go to our website, right on the front page. There's a button that you push that says, I want the free ebook. We won't collect your email address. We do work all around the world, so we have to be GDPR compliant, so we don't collect anybody's anything. However, if you would like to get information from us, where is the clipboard at this point? Is it going around the room somewhere? There's a clipboard that should be going around, there it is, where you can sign up. You can give us your name and email address and check a box and give us permission to give you information about us. But the ebook is yours. You don't have to give us anything to get the ebook, not even your personal information. And what we do at the Agile Fluency Project is, for those scaling purposes, so that we can see Agile done well in more and more and more and all of the organizations, we want to do what we can to help our peers, our colleagues, the coaches and leaders and Scrum Masters that we know about do the best possible work they can. And so Jim and I have put together all of our understanding of how to make these things work well, and along with the model, we've got a diagnostic, we've got a game, we've got some other stuff. And we're here to help. We're here to help because that's the only way we can achieve our vision of seeing Agile done well in every organization according to its business needs with their high-performing teams. Thank you very much. And I'll stay for questions. We have 5 minutes.